Hello everyone, welcome back again to the channel. It has been a long time and yeah, I had a long break, a lot of things to do, new job and many other things. But anyway, here I am. I've decided to make a new Arch installation. So in this video, it's going to be a basic install. I want to take a little bit more time about the basic utilities for Linux administration so that you can understand well the basic system basically, because in the end Arch Linux is a distribution you're building yourself with binaries, but it's very important to understand how the system works. And so to get a good understanding of the base of the system, of the management of the system, will give you a solid ground for installing later some desktop environments or window managers. So in this video, I'm gonna take a look at the basic install. We're gonna install also Timeshift with snapshotting to make sure that you have a solid base system that you can roll back to in case that you are installing a window manager or desktop environment and incur into any problem. So let's get going here and see how we can install Arch Linux. So welcome to the terminal again. It has been some time since I've done an Arch install. And just a small disclaimer, I am now in my new place, as you probably already know. This is definitely not a really isolated room, so you might hear some external noises sometimes, like birds, which are very close to my window here, so I apologize for that, but I cannot really change it. So I've been doing actually some thinking about doing again Arch installations, as I posted in the last weeks on my channel, and I've decided actually to go ahead and make one Arch install from scratch following the Arch ISO, and we're going to install this time line by line because I want to spend a little bit time about the basic commands, not only for installing Arch, but in generally, so that you understand also the utilities used, which are also used not only to install Arch, but also to manage the system. So this is really basic administration stuff. So Arch Linux is a distribution which provides you with binaries, but you basically are responsible for building up your system. Now, as you probably already know, there is also the Arch install script coming on the Arch ISO, which works really well. This is a quicker way to install Arch because you don't have to type the commands yourself. You just tell the script what you need, what you want, how you want to this partition, etc., and it will install everything for you. So it's a very convenient way to install Arch if you are in a hurry, for example, or you don't have much time to do anything else. But I think following the Arch install guide, the Arch wiki, line by line gives you the chance to know the system from the inner workings. So you learn also about the utilities we are using. You learn also to manage the system. You learn about services. You learn about packages. You learn about installing a grub bootloader, etc., how to enable services, how to enable users. This is really basic stuff because this is going to be the building block of what you're going to build afterwards. So when you have a basic install, when you have the basic system installed, you can really go ahead and then install, a desktop environment or a window manager, which I'm going to do in the next video over this video. So it's very important, in my opinion, to know the basic installation because it provides you with the basic knowledge to administer your system. Since Arch Linux is really your responsibility, it's your Linux distribution, your installation to maintain, you need to know what utilities you have to use and what they do and the options, etc. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the basic install today, going through line by line. I'm going to install the system with the Btrfs file system because it offers us snapshot capabilities. And so this is how I'm going to install it here. Now, this is a special install in the sense that actually I'm installing on a laptop. This is a Dell laptop, which has an NVIDIA card, and it has already also Windows installed on it. So this is going to be basically like a dual boot install. And there are some things which are different than a normal install, I'd say, where you have only the Arch Linux installation. So you can see here I have the root Arch ISO prompt, and I am connected. If you see the first line on the display there, you can see I am connected to this laptop via SSH. Now I'm going to show you how I've done that, but basically I want to tell you how I got there before. So I downloaded the Arch ISO from the Arch Linux website, of course, and burned it to a USB stick, and then I booted up my Dell laptop from the stick. I assume actually you know how to do that, so that's why I'm not going to show it to you here. Once you boot the laptop from the USB stick, you will see the root Arch ISO prompt. So basically, you will see what I see. Um, and so the first thing what I need to do every single time, because I do not have an American keyboard, I need to change the keyboard layout. Otherwise, I will be making typos the whole time. So how do we do this? Well, we have several ways. But you need to know first, of course, your keyboard layout. So I have, for example, a Swiss German keyboard and I know its connotation. So I know it's called DE_CH-Latin1, but I need to know for sure that it's available in the system before I can load it into the system itself. So how can we do this? We can use the localctl utility, which is used to do something like that. So we can type in localctl and then hit enter. And you can see this is not giving us much because it's not really configured right now. But let me clean up the terminal with Control L. And if I type in again localctl and then add the option list dash key maps and hit enter, it gives me basically a list of key maps available that I can load into memory. So I don't want to go through the whole list here, but I want to search for the keyboard layout that I have, which is again the Swiss German keyboard. So I'm just going to pull up again the last command with the up arrow, and I'm going to use the localctl utility again. And this time I'm going to use what's called a pipe, and I'm going to pipe the result of this command into another utility, which is called the grep utility, which is basically a kind of filter to a criteria that you give to the grep utility itself. So what we are going to do, we are going to use the result of localctl list key map, which is the long list of keyboards layout we have available, and we are going to pipe all those results using the vertical slash, which is the symbol for piping the result into another utility, into another command, and that command is going to be the grep utility. The grep utility is one of the most used one in Linux administration, and we're going to tell the grep utility basically what to look for. So what I'm looking for, it's let's say I know it's finishing with Latin1, and then I can hit enter. And you can see it's showing me basically everything which has Latin1 in the string. And the one I'm looking for is exactly the first one, DE_CH-Latin1. So how do I load this into memory? Control L again to clean up the terminal. I'm going to use another utility which is called load keys. So load keys and then the keyboard layout I found. So DE_CH-Latin1. And now the keyboard layout is loaded in memory. Now this is basic because otherwise I cannot type any other command, or I have to look for the keys on the US keyboard, and it's quite complicated. So that's for me step number one. Step number two, I need to connect my laptop to the Wi-Fi, to my Wi-Fi network here. So to do this on the Arch ISO, you have the IWD utility, which can be controlled or can be used, can be managed with the IWCTL utility, IW control utility. So let's type in here in the terminal IWCTL and hit enter. And you can see now we are in the IWD utility. So what we want to do here, we want to see our Wi-Fi adapters. So which Wi-Fi adapters do we have in our system? To find this out, we can just type in here device list and then hit enter. Now I have only one Wi-Fi adapter in my system. It's called WLAN 0. This is probably what's most of the time called, but sometimes it might differ. I haven't seen, I've seen actually a couple of times other names, but most of the time is WLAN 0. Now, if you don't see your Wi-Fi adapter here, most likely it's been blocked by some driver or something else. So for that, you can probably use the rfkill utility to unblock your Wi-Fi adapter with something like rfkill unblock Wi-Fi, for example. And I will leave a link to this in the video description where you have more information about rfkill. But most of the time, this should work really fine. So once you have the name of the adapter, that's just step number one, but we need to find out also the list of networks. I mean, you probably know already the network name, but if you want to see the networks around you and you're not sure maybe what your network is called, you can type in here station, then the name of the Wi-Fi adapter, so WLAN 0, and then get dash networks, and then hit enter. So this is the list of networks I have around me. There's many. The one I have, my network is actually the first one, and I'm already connected to it. As you can see on the left side of the first network, there is this arrow pointing to the right. So this it's already connected because otherwise I couldn't show you this via SSH. But if you are not, you can type in now in the terminal station WLAN 0 and then connect and then the Wi-Fi name. So in my case, it would be Sunrise Wi-Fi 1, whatever. And once you hit enter, you will be asked for the passphrase. You can enter the passphrase and then you will be brought back to the IWD prompt. Now, in my case, even I hit enter, it's not going to ask me anything because I'm already connected. So it's bringing me back to the IWD prompt directly. Now, once you have done that, we can exit the IWD utility with Control D on the keyboard, or you can type also exit. We can clean up the terminal with Control L. And now we can type in IP space A to check our Wi-Fi adapter and if we have an IP. So we have two interfaces. The first one is the loopback device. We don't need to worry about that. The second one, which is the number 3, is our WLAN 0 adapter. So that's our Wi-Fi adapter. And you can see in the iNet line, the purple IP address there is 192.168.1.1.1.9. And that's good. We have an IP, so it means we are connected to the network. Now I want to check if I can connect to the internet. Now to do this, we can use something very simple like the ping utility, and we can ping, for example, the Arch Linux website. So I'm going to type in here ping-c5, which is going to count. It's going to ping basically 5 times the website I want to ping, and I want to ping archlinux.org and then hit enter. And you can see it's pinging correctly, I'd say. And after the 5th time, it stops automatically. So that means we have a working internet connection. And this is done. Now, if you want to connect to your laptop from another computer via SSH like I did here, you need to provide the root user here on the Arch ISO with a password because by default it does not have one. So in this case, you can just type in passwd and hit enter. You will be asked to enter the password twice. And then your root user here on the Arch ISO will do have a password. And once you have done that, if you want to connect to your laptop in this case, or to another computer in this case via SSH, you can do so by using the SSH command on your machine. So let me quickly here exit the root ISO, and I go back to my machine here where I am typing this. And I can use now SSH. And now it's auto-completing here because I'm using ZSH as a shell. And the command will be root at the IP of your machine. Then once you hit enter, you will be asked for the password you just set for the root user there. So I'm just going to enter that. And once you do that, you will be again back into your laptop, ready to go with your Arch Linux installation. So we configured a couple of things. There is still one thing I want to configure before moving on and partitioning the disk, and that is to also check the time and the date of my system. So if I type in date, for example, it gives me the date of the system. So you can see today is Sunday, May 28th. It says it's 5:59 p.m. This is UTC time. Actually, in my time zone is almost 8 o'clock now because it's UTC plus 2. Now, this is not really an issue, but I want to actually make sure that the system is with my time zone just to avoid any kind of synchronization problems. So what I can do with this is to use another utility, which is called TimeDateCTL. And by the way, if you see me sometimes cleaning up the terminal is because I want to start from a clean slate so that you can have a better view. And if you want to do that, you can always type on the keyboard Control L. So TimeDateCTL, if I type in TimeDateCTL, It provides me some informations, basic information about the system. So the local time, universal time, RTC time, time zone, NTP service, and so on. So I want to make sure actually that the system, the local time is actually UTC plus 2 because that's actually where I am. So how can I do that? Well, I can use the time date CTL utility the same way I used locale CTL for my keyboard. So I can pull up the last command with the up arrow and give it an option, for example, like list time zones. And again, you guessed it, we get a list of time zones around the world. So I want to check if my time zone is in here. So what we are going to do, we are going to use the same idea we used in localctl. We are going to basically use the output of this command and we are going to pipe it into the grep utility. And we're going to ask the grep utility to search for a string. In this case, I know in my country there is only one time zone which corresponds to that, which is Zurich. That's the only city we have which corresponds to the time zone. And then we can hit enter and you can see it's finding the time zone for me. So now again, I can use the same utility. So time date CTL. And instead of list time zone, I can say set dash time zone. And I can tell the time zone just I found. So Europe slash Zurich. And then hit enter. Now what happens if I pull up again the time date CTL utility by itself? It gives me slightly different informations. You can see the local time is now CEST, 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. And the time zone is Europe Zurich, CST plus 2, which is correct. Now, you want to make sure also that the NTP service is active. NTP stands for Network Time Protocol, and it needs to be active. It's better if it's active to avoid, again, any synchronization problem also with the repositories with the mirrors. So this is now set. The basic things are set. Now we can proceed by creating our system. We need to first take care of our disk and then installing our packages. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me type in lsblk here. So you can see here with the lsblk, we always see the disks available in our system. And right now you can see on the left side, we have the loop device. This is actually the Arch ISO. We have SDA, which is the USB key stick. So I'm not going to touch that. I have NVMe 1 and 1. This is the second SSD I have in this laptop. And you can see it's already partitioned with 3 partitions, P1, P2, P3, because actually a Linux system is already installed in there. But I'm going to erase it and install it from scratch anyway. And then I have NVMe 0 and 1. This is disk number 1 in the system. It's the first SSD and it's about 512 gigabytes in size. And this is where Windows is installed. Now, in this case, you have to pay attention to one thing, and that is NVMe 0 and 1 P1. So that is the first partition on the first disk. You can see it's 100 megabytes, and that is actually the EFI partition. Now, the EFI partition is where the bootloader is going to be installed. Now, you might ask, okay, how can I know if my machine is EFI or not? Well, you can check this by typing in a command which is also documented in the Arch wiki. Let me clean up the terminal again, and that would be ls. So we are going to list the content of one directory. If this content is going to be displayed, it means you are on a UEFI machine. If you get an error message, it means you are on an older MBR system. And for that, I have actually videos about installing Arch on older system that you can check on the channel. But on this Dell laptop, it's a UEFI machine. I know that, but I just want to show you how it looks like when you type this in. So the directory to check is /sys/firmware /EFI and EFI vars, and then hit enter. So you can see it's displaying the content. That means it is indeed a UEFI machine. So what's important to know is, as I said, the EFI partition is NVMe 0 and 1P1. This is where the Windows Boot Manager is right now installed. How do I know it's a EFI partition? Well, I know because it's a Windows, it's where the Windows Boot Manager is installed. But if you want to check, if you want to double check, you can use another utility, which is the block ID utility, and then give the device path, which is /dev/NVMe 0 and 1P1. Then once you hit enter here, you will see a couple of informations. For example, You can see the type of the partition. It's VFAT, so it's a FAT file system, and the partition label which was given from Windows is EFI system partition. So this is actually the partition we are going to install grub, our Linux bootloader. Now, if you don't have Windows installed or you don't have any other EFI partition, you will have to create one from scratch when you partition your disk. I'm going to show you how you can do this. It's the process of creating partitions. It's the same for EFI, for root, home, or whatever partition you want to create. Just the codes for the partition might be different, but I'm going to show you this in a second. Now, what I want to do here, let me again clean up the screen. It's to basically erase NVMe 1 and 1 because I want to install Linux from scratch in there. So what I'm going to do, because this is a UEFI machine, I'm going to use a utility for creating GPT partition tables because a UEFI machine has to have a GPT partition table. And the utility I'm using for that is called gdisk. And gdisk needs to have a parameter, which is the path to the disk. So the path is going to be /dev for device, and then the disk name, which is NVMe 1 and 1. Not the partition names, I just need the disk name because I need to then erase and then create partitions again on it. And then we can hit enter. You can see it says found valid GPT with protective MBR, and I want to actually erase this partition table and create a new one. So to do this, I'm going to use O, the letter O, which is going to be creating a new partition table. And you can see it asks me if I want to proceed. This option deletes all partitions and creates a new protective MBR. I'm going to say Y, so yes. And now we have basically a brand new partition table. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to actually create my partitions. As I said before, if you do not have a EFI partition, you will need to create one. That's mandatory, but I will not do it here because I have already one. And it's mandatory to create also a root partition. A home partition and swap partition are not really mandatory. In this case, in this video, I'm going to actually create just one root partition, and I'm going to format it with the BudFS file system, which is going to have two subvolumes. One is going to be root and one is going to be home. You could also have a home partition for the home subvolume, but I prefer to do actually the subvolumes only on the same partition. Anyway, snapshots are going to be for the root subvolume mostly, so I'm not going to worry much about the home subvolume anyway in my case. Now, to create a new partition, whether it's a root partition or a EFI partition, you're going to use the N letter for new and hit enter. Now, the partition number is number 1. It's the default. You can accept that. As same for the first sector, it's not starting at the beginning of the disk, which is absolutely fine. The last sector is going to basically define the size of the partition. Now, if you are creating an EFI partition, you can create it of 100 megabytes or bigger, like 512. It really depends also, how much space you have on your disk and how on which bootloader you want to install. With grub, for example, you don't need much space because with grub, the initramfs is stored anyway on the root partition. So in my case, I would probably install grub because I have anyway a EFI partition of 100 megabytes. If you want to create a partition in here of whichever size, you can type in something like, I don't know, 512M and hit enter, and it's going to be a 512 megabytes partition. In my case, though, I want to actually use the whole partition for the root subvolume and home subvolume later. So I'm just going to accept here the default. It's going to use the whole disk for one partition. Now, here it's going to ask me for the code. So if you are using here, for example, a EFI partition, you will need to change the code because it's not A300. This is the Linux file system. The code for the EFI system partition, if you are creating this from scratch, it's EF00. And if you want to make sure that is correct, you just type L in here, capital L, and then search for a string, for example, like EFI. And you can see EF00, it's the EFI system partition. So that's the one you need if you want to create an EFI partition from scratch. In my case, though, it is a Linux file system, so I can accept the default 8300. So I'm just going to hit enter. And basically, now what I need to do, I need to write those changes to the disk. Now, if you created just the EFI partition, you can create a second partition using the same process for the root partition. So type in N, accepting the default for the partition number, first sector, last sector, and so on. Now we write the changes to the disk by typing in W and hitting enter. And it asks me, are you sure you want to proceed? And I'm going to say yes. And it's going to take a couple of seconds to do that. You can see the operation has completed successfully. That means that if I use now again lsblk, you can see NV1 and 1 has now only one partition, which is using the whole disk, and it's called NVMe 1 and 1 P1. So now that we have our partition created, we need to format it. So to format it, now I'm going to use the Btrfs file system because it has also snapshotting capabilities and it's performing very well. I've been using the Btrfs file system now for quite some time, and I'm really been happy with that. So how do we do this? Well, we can actually use the mkfs utility. Now, let me first tell you, if you're formatting your EFI partition, you will have to use the FAT file system. So mkfs is okay, but then you'll have to specify which file system you want to use. And in that case, it's going to be the FAT file system, the FAT file system. And it's going to be of F32. So it's going to be a FAT32 file system. And then you're going to provide the device path. For example, it's going to be something like /dev/ the name of your partition might be NVMe 0N1P1 or 1N1P1 or STI1, whatever disk you are using. In my case, though, I don't want to format this, of course, with the FAT file system because I already have an EFI partition. I'm going to use the Btrfs file system instead. And I'm going to provide the only partition I have, which is /dev/ NVMe 1 and 1 P1, and then I can hit enter. So you can see here the partitions before in this disk, they had also some other things. They had swaps, they had also ext4. So it says it appears to contain an existing file system. It was a swap. So we need to use the F option with the previous command to force basically the partition to format with Btrfs. So let me clean up the terminal and pull up the last command with the up arrow and basically add here the -F switch to force the partitioning. And you can see now it's formatting the disk just fine. Now, if I type in again lsblk and I want to check that, or I want to double check that, I can use again block ID and then /dev/ NVMe 1 and 1 P1. I'm going to check the partition this time. And you can see here it's telling me the type is Btrfs, which is exactly right. And the partition table is Linux file system. So everything is set. We created the partition. We formatted the partition. Now we need to mount it. But there is a but. We are using here the Btrfs file system. Btrfs file system needs to have subvolumes, which are not yet created. So how do we do this? It's a little complex. The process is a little bit complex, but it's not that difficult. So what we need to do, we need to first mount our root directory. What the hell is the root directory? The root directory is the directory where the new system is going to be installed, because we're not installing the system in a USB stick. We are going to install it on our machine. So what we need to do here, we need to basically mount our new partition NVMe 1 and 1 P1 on the MNT directory, which is the directory it's going to be used to install the packages for the new system. So we are going to type in now mount. We're going to use the mount utility. And we need to tell the mount utility, okay, which partition do you want to mount? That is /dev/ NVMe 1 and 1 P1. And where do you want to mount this? I want to mount it under the /mnt directory, which is already present here. So this is good and this is done, but it's not yet finished because we need to create the subvolumes for our Btrfs file system. And to do this, the easy way is to go into the mount directory. So cd for change directory /mnt. We're going to go in there. You can see the prompt changes. Now I am in the mnt directory. Now I can create my subvolumes. Now, there are many possibilities here for creating subvolumes. You can create 2 subvolumes, 3, 4, how many you want to. Usually, theoretically speaking, if you take the snapshots of your root subvolume, you might want to maybe, for example, make another subvolume for your logs if you don't want to snapshot your logs because maybe they take a lot of space. So you can create a subvolume for var log, for example. or you can create another subvolume for something else if it's needed. I'm gonna keep it extremely simple in my case, and that has been always working very well for me. I'm gonna create just a root subvolume and a home subvolume. So to create the two subvolumes, I'm gonna type in btrfs subvolume and then create. And the first subvolume is going to be the root subvolume, which is distinguished by the @ symbol. And that's it. So I can hit enter and you can see the subvolume has been created. Now, how to create the home subvolume? Well, you're going to use the same command, just pull up with the up arrow and just add home to create the home subvolume. And so you understand what I mean here. You can pull up again the last command and create as many subvolumes as you want. Just then you have to remember to create also the directory for them. I'm going to show you afterwards when we get there how to do that. Now, the subvolumes are now created. What we need to do now, we need to unmount the mount directory. And the reason is because we want to remount the subvolumes we just created with the options we want for the btrfs file system. So I'm going to go back to the root archiso directory, so the main directory basically. I'm going to clean up the terminal. And I'm going to unmount the mount directory by typing in umount/mnt. So that means now I'm ready to mount my two new subvolumes into my system with the options I decide to use. How do we do this? We're going to use again the mount utility. So mount -o, O stands for options. And so we're going to define basically the options we want for our subvolumes. And the first one is going to be the no A time option, no access time. It's going to basically increase the performance of read times in the SSD. I'm going to use also the SSD option because I have an SSD. I'm going to use also the space cache and the version 2 because lately I have been problems with the normal one. I have to use version 2. Space cache basically is going to check the free space on your disk and optimize it. And I'm going to install also the compress option. I use the compress option, and the compression type I'm going to use is ZSTD, and by default it's going to use level 3. So there are many compression options here. You can check out the link in the video description about btrfs where it explains you in detail every single compression method and compression level, and you can decide for yourself. But ZSTD level 3, it's one of the most used ones. It works really well. And I'm going to use also the discard option to make also the performance of the SSD better with the async option. And the last option is I want to define the subvol. So I'm basically going to tell which subvolume I'm using here, which is the root subvolume we created before. And then I need to tell the mount utility which device I'm talking about. And you know the device is the partition, so it's /dev/nvme1 and 1p1. And then the directory where you want to mount this subvolume, which is again /mnt, our root basically for the new installation. Now I want to mount also our home subvolume in there, but I cannot mount it on MNT because it's already mounted on the root subvolume. So that means in my new system, I need to create a new directory called home in my case. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to type in mkdir /mnt/home. I'm just creating the home directory because mnt is already existing. And now to make it easy here, I want to mount the home subvolume with the same options I mounted the root subvolume. So I'm just going to pull up the last two commands here, and I'm going to change those two things. I'm going to change the subvol option because it's not anymore but at home, because we're using the home subvolume. And the mount point is not mnt, but is /mnt/home, which we just created. And that's going to be it. Now, another thing is we need to mount also the EFI partition, whether you created one yourself or whether you have one created by Windows. But again, we need to create the directory for it. So I'm going to type in again mkdir, make directory. I'm going to use the -p option to create a parent directory. So basically two directories at once at least. So I'm going to create /mnt, it's already there, if I can type it correctly. And the ones I want to create are boot and EFI, because I'm going to mount my EFI partition in there. So you remember the EFI partition in my case is on the first disk. So to mount that here, I can type in mount. I don't need any specific option here, so I can just type in here /dev /nvme 0 and 1 p1 into /mnt/boot /EFI. So this is where my EFI partition is going to be mounted. Now, remember, this is a laptop which has also Windows installed. What I could do, I could also create a directory for Windows that can be mounted in my system when I boot up the machine. And then I can go in there, and if I need something from the Windows partition, I could also look in there. So I'm going to create another directory, so mkdir /mnt/Windows. So this is creating basically the Windows directory into my new installed system, which we are going to install very soon. And then hit enter. Now, with lsblk, I can see which partition is actually used for Windows, and that is actually the third partition of the first disk. So that is NVMe 0 and 1 P3. So I can mount that by typing in mount /dev /nvme 0 and 1 P3 on /mnt/Windows, which we just created. So mounts are done. Let me type in lsblk again. And you can see the mount points now. So we have NVMe 1 and 1 P1. It's mounted on home and root. That's fine because there are two subvolumes on the same partition. We have NVMe 0 and 1 P1, which is our EFI partition mounted on boot EFI. And the Windows partition is mounted under the Windows directory. So this is now good to go. So now we are ready to install the system. Before we do that, first I want to make sure that I'm using the fastest mirrors available in my country. So to make sure of that, I can use the reflector utility which comes pre-installed in the Arch ISO. And I can use something like this. I can tell reflector which countries to search for. So -- country. In my case, it's going to be Switzerland because I live here right now. And --h, basically, since how many hours those mirrors have been refreshed. I'm going to say 6 hours. And I'm going to sort them by rate. So I'm going to sort them by speed, basically. And I'm going to save these mirrors into the etc pacman.d and then mirror list file. So the etc directory is the directory where the configurations files are stored. Pacman.d is basically containing custom configuration files, and the mirror list is going to be in there. So this is going to take a moment to go through the mirrors. In my country, there are not many, so it's pretty fast. And then you will have an up-to-date mirror list. We can check the connection to the repositories by typing in pacman-sy just to update the repositories or synchronize the repositories, and you can see it's synchronizing just fine. So now we are ready to install the base packages for our system. So let me clean up the terminal and use the packstrap utility. Now the packstrap utility is used to install the packages for a new install. So I'm going to use also the -k switch, which is used to install the packages and a new Arch Linux keyring. And I need to tell the packstrap utility, okay, where do you want me to install those packages? And I'm going to tell packstrap install them in /mnt because that's our root partition for the new system. And then I can tell packstrap which packages I want to install. So I want to install the base package, which is the basic package for Arch Linux. I'm going to install the latest Linux kernel and also Linux-firmware. Contains some firmware for my laptop. And I have also an Intel processor, so I'm going to type in Intel-U code, which provides the microcode for my processor, makes the performance a little better. And because I'm using BudderFS here, I'm going to also install BudderFS-prox, although I'm pretty sure it's going to be installed anyway, but I'm going to install it here specifically. And I'm going to install one editor. In my case, it's going to be Vim. Feel free to install Nano or Emacs if you prefer that. It doesn't really matter. And then we can just hit enter. Now it's creating my keyring and now it's installing my base packages. Now, depending on how fast your connection is, it's going to take a little time. In my case, the connection here is much lower than the one I had in my previous place, but that's fine. I'm going to take a break and I'll be back with you guys once the installation is done. So the packages have been installed, and you can see, And so we can proceed to the next step, which is generating the file system table. So what is the file system table? Is actually the file containing the mount points and options for your system. So when we created our mount points before, basically we are going to take these mount points and store them in a new file in our new system so that when the machine boots, it knows where to mount what. So to do that, we can use the utility provided by Arch on the Arch ISO, which is called genfstab or generate file system table. And we are going to use for generating that the U option, which is going to use the UUIDs of the partitions. Now, UUIDs are unique identifiers for each partition, and they make sure basically that they don't get confused with any other partition. So I definitely recommend to use UUIDs. You can also use labels if you gave labels to your partitions, but in my case, I'm going to use UUIDs. So I'm going to tell genfstab, okay, take everything we have under the slash mnt, so all the mount points we have there, and append all this information by using the twice the major symbol. This is meaning basically append the result of this command to something, in this case to a file. And that file is going to be into our new installation, which is under slash mnt slash etc slash fstab. So it's going to be in the etc directory of our new system, and the file name is going to be called fstab. And so if I type in now cat, this is the concatenate utility in Linux, which is used also to display content of a file, and we type in slash mnt slash etc slash fstab, we are going to see basically all the mount points we created before. We have our root partition, we have our EFI partition, our home partition, well, subvolume, better said, and also our Windows partition. So this is now done. We can enter now our system by typing in arch-root. This is the utility used to move into our new install base system and continue the configuration in there. So we need to tell your utility where is the system, and the system is under slash mnt. So this, now you can see the prompt is changed to root arch ISO, different color in square brackets. If I type in ls here, you can see the directory we just created when we installed the base packages, basically, plus the directories I created, like for example, the Windows directory. So what's going to happen now, we are going to basically continue the configuration of the file. There are a couple of steps we need to do and install also some extra packages. So let's get to it. So the first thing, we need to define also the time zone in our new system, not in the root Arch ISO, but in our new system here where we're installing Arch. And so I know my time zone because I found it out before, it's Europe Zurich. So what we need to do, we need to link that time zone in a file under the etc directory. It's the directory in Linux where configuration files are stored. So we can type in ln-sf. Now it's going to create basically a symbolic link from one file to another. And the file which we want to create the link to, it's under slash user slash share slash zone info slash Europe in my case and slash Zurich in my case. And I want to link this information to slash etc slash local time and then hit enter. So the time zone is now set for the new system. Now we want to synchronize also the hardware clock of my laptop to the system clock. So that's fairly simple. We can use the HW clock utility, and the option is dash dash sys2hc. So system clock to hardware clock basically, and hit enter. Now, the next step is to configure also the locales for our system. Now, the locales are stored in a file in the etc directory because it's a configuration file, and it's called locale.gen. So we need to go into this file and edit basically the locales we want to use. So I'm going to use my editor, freshly installed Vim, on slash etc slash locale.gen and hit enter. So you can see here we have a list of locales available for us. I know I'm looking for the English US, so I'm going to search here in Vim by using the / and then type in en_US. You can see it's popping up right there. And the one I want is exactly that one, UTF-8. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in insert mode in Vim by hitting I on the keyboard. and delete the hash, basically delete the comment so that the option is active. You can also select other ones if you want, but in my case, this is the one I want. So I can then escape the insert mode and save the file with :x in Vim. Now I need to generate the locales, which I now uncommented. And to do this, I'm going to use the locale-gen utility, very simply. And you can see it's generating the locales. It takes just less than a second to do that. So now that I generated the locales, I need to store them in a configuration file in the system as well. So the configuration file, as you probably learned by now, it's under the etc directory, and the file is called locale.conf. We can go into the file and put in the string, or we can use also another method, which is to basically do a one-liner and put the content directly in the file without going into the file itself. So let me show you how to do this. We can use the echo utility, which is used to print something on screen, or to basically put the content of the string you want to output into a file, for example, which is what we want to do right now. So we are going to tell the system echo this content, which is between the quotes, and the content is lang for language, and the language is equal to the locales we just found. So en underscore us dot utf dash 8 close quotes. And so we are going to tell echo this out and put this information into /etc /locale.conf. So basically locale.conf is going to have lang equal en underscore us dot utf dash 8. We're going to do the same for our key map, because when we boot the system, I want to make sure that my keyboard is actually the correct one, and I don't want to type load keys every time. I want my Swiss keyboard to be automatically detected or configured when I boot the system. So to do this, I'm going to use again the echo command, and I'm going to tell this time the echo command put this into another file. So I'm going to put key map, and the key map was, in my case, de underscore ch dash latin1. Of course, replace this with yours, close quotes, and append again this information to /etc, and the file we are going to write this in is vconsole.conf, and then hit enter. So I know when I boot up my machine in the console, I have my keyboard layout already configured. Next, we are going to give the system a host name. So we're going to call our machine something. So we can basically edit the hostname file, which is again under the etc directory. This time I'm going to use Vim. So I'm going to type in vim/etc/hostname. And I'm going to call my machine Arch, very simply, and escape insert mode and :x to save and exit the file. So the next step is to give the root user a password. So I'm going to type in here passwd, and this is going to change the password for the root user in the new system, not in the root ISO we used to connect via SSH. So enter the new password and retype it, and the password was updated successfully. So now we are ready to install some extra packages for our system. Now, which packages you need, you want, it's really up to you. Here, I'm just going to show you what I use most of the time, but feel free to browse through the Arch website, the Arch Linux website on the packages, and go around and browse and search for the packages that you might be interested in, and you can install them if you want to. Now, to install packages, we are going to use, of course, Pacman, the package manager for Arch, with the S option. So I'm going to install grub, which is our bootloader, and another boot utility is EFI boot mgr, the EFI boot manager. Some networking utility, which are always useful. I'm going to use network manager, and eventually the network manager applet, which might be useful when I install a desktop environment or a window manager. I'm going to install Dialog, another network utility, and WPA supplicant as well. Now, because I have also Windows installed, I want to install also mtools and DOS FS tools. I'm going to install also Reflector to have it installed in my new system. and some development packages which I know I'm gonna use all the time. So the first one is base-devel and also Linux-headers. So then we can install, for example, also packages for our Bluetooth adapter. So I'm gonna install blues and blues-utils. I'm going to install CAPS. CAPS is the printing system for Linux. And if you have an HP printer, you can install also HPlib, which is providing you drivers for printers and scanners from HP. And I'm going to install also some sound packages. The first one is alsa-utils. It contains some utilities that I might use. I never know, so I'm just going to install it just to make sure. And I'm going to install the new Pipewire packages because I'm using this most of the time anyway. I'm not using Pulse Audio anymore, so I'm just going to type in Pipewire and all the compatibility layers for Pipewire with older protocols like ALSA, Pulse, Jack, and so on. So I'm going to install also Pipewire-ALSA, Pipewire-Pulse, and Pipewire-Jack. And let's see what else. We can install also Bash completion. This is good to have, nice to have, and good to have. I'm going to install also OpenSSH. And just in case I might need it, rsync, great backup utility and sync utility, and also ACPI, power utility, power management, ACPI underscore call, and also TLP for always for power management. And what else? I'm going to install also the soft firmware. This is containing sound firmware for my laptop. I know without this package, my Dell laptop will not produce any sound and I'm gonna have dummy devices and no sound at all. I'm gonna install also ACPID and also OS Prober because I want to be able to detect my Windows installation and NTFS-3G to access my Windows directory. And I think that's most likely it. Well, no, I'm going to install also some other packages. I'm going to install also the NVIDIA packages because I do have an NVIDIA card in this laptop. So I'm going to install NVIDIA for the latest NVIDIA drivers because this is a fairly new NVIDIA card in this laptop. And NVIDIA-utils and NVIDIA settings. So for now, this is actually all. So I'm just going to hit enter here. And hopefully I typed everything correctly. Nope. So the last packages miss actually one letter. It's NVIDIA. There you go. That looks better. And also here, NVIDIA. And now it should work fine. So for the Pipewire session, I'm going to use actually Wire Plumber because I'm used to use that most of the time. And the rest I can install by hitting enter. So again, it's going to take some time depending on the speed of your internet connection. I'm going to take another break, guys, and I'll be back with you in a moment. So you can see the packages are now installed. Now there are still a couple of steps we need to take before we can reboot our machine, and that is we need to install our grub bootloader and we need to enable also some services, and I will also at the end add a user for the system because I don't want to use root on my new laptop by default. So we need to install grub. I mean, we installed the package already, and I realize now actually that we are using Btrfs. We can install also grub Btrfs. Let me do this very quickly. Pacman-s. This is available in the main repositories. Grub Btrfs and proceed with the installation. It's going to take a moment because it's going to recreate the initram fs. And you can see now it's installed, so we can proceed now by installing our grub bootloader. So to do this, we use the grub install utility, so we can type in grub-install. We need to define the target machine. Let me clean up the terminal. You can see better here on the top. The target machine, it's actually a 64-bit machine and it's a UEFI machine. So the target is going to be x86_64-EFI. The directory, which is going to be installed on, so we're defining this by typing in --EFI -directory is equal to our /boot/EFI. We are, don't forget, we are now in the new system, so MNT, we don't need to type MNT because we are in MNT. And then at the end, dash dash bootloader dash ID equal grub. I think that should do it. So we can just hit enter and it's going to take a couple of seconds to install. You can see installation finished, no error reported. So it means we installed grub, but it does not actually have yet a configuration file. So to do this, we need to use the grub mkconfig utility, which is another grub utility. So we can type in grub -mkconfig, so make configuration. And we are going to take the output by using the -o option. The output of this command is going to go into a file. So the file is going to be /boot/grub, and the file is called grub.cfg. And then we can hit enter. So it's going to take a moment to do this. You can see here a couple of things. First of all, OS Prober will not be executed to detect other bootable partitions. And that's because the option check grub disable OS Prober, it's actually active. So OS Prober will be disabled by default. If we want to enable it, we need to go into there and enable it. So we can do this by typing in vim/etc/default/grub. This is the default configuration file for grub. I'm going to go down at the end of the file and we are going to basically uncomment this line to tell grub actually that OS Prober should be enabled. So the disable option is false, -- plus. So it's going to be enabled. Then we can save this file and exit Vim. Now what we can do, we can rerun the grub configuration command we used before, and the OS Prober will be used, but Windows most likely will not be detected yet. As you can see, it's not giving me any warning about OS Prober, but Windows is not detected yet. And that's fine, because it's going to be when we reboot our machine. We will need to rerun this command one more time, but we're going to take care of this after the reboot anyway. So now we can enable some of our system. So I want to enable network manager so that I have network management possibilities when I reboot my laptop. So I can use the systemctl utility, systemd utility to control also services, and I'm going to enable network manager and hit enter. And it's created a symlink, so when I boot my machine, it's going to be available. The next, I'm going to pull up the last command and also activate or enable my Bluetooth adapters when I reboot my machine. The same thing is going to go the same for cups, my printing service. So cups.service. And what else do we have? We can enable also OpenSSH, and the service for that is SSHD. I'm going to also enable the TLP service by enable TLP. And I'm going to also enable two timers, the reflector timer, which is going to basically regenerate my mirror list once in a while. And so I'm going to pull up the last command here and type in reflector dot timer and then hit enter. And I can also enable actually the fstream for my SSD by typing in fstream.timer. This is going to periodically trim the SSD on my system. And the last thing I want to enable is ACPID. So let me type in enable ACPID and then hit enter. So the system now and the services are enabled. So that means when I reboot my machine, I'll have all the systems available to me. The last step before we reboot our machine is to create a new user for the system, because as I said, I don't want to use the root user when I reboot my machine. So to create a new user, we have in Linux the user add utility. So user add. And there are many options for user add. One of those is -m to create a home directory for the home user. And then I'm going to define the username, which is hermano, so my username. I can give now this user a password by typing in passwd and then the username and a new password and retype it. I think I probably didn't type it correctly. There you go. I'm going to do it one more time. and retype it. And now it's correctly done. And what I want to do, as the last step here, I want to actually give this user sudo privileges. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go into the etc directory. There is a sudoers.d directory in there, which is a directory for custom configuration for sudo users, basically. And I want to use, in this case, I can use the echo command again to output everything in these double quotes, which is hermano all equal all space all close quotes. So I'm going to put this line by using again twice the major symbol sign into slash etc slash sudoers dot d, and the file is going to be hermano. So with this file and this line, hermano is going to have sudo privileges when I reboot my machine. Now, if you want to have more options and you want to curious about learning more about options about this utility, like user add, for example, or user mod for modifying a user, I can use, for example, user mod with the C switch, which stands for comments, and I can put, for example, in the single quotes like my full name, close single quotes, for this user. So that means when you boot up, for example, a desktop environment like GNOME, it's going to show you my full name and not the username, and hit enter. Now, if you want more infos about these switches, you can also use the man pages. By default, though, if I type in man user mod to check the man pages for user mod, you will see that it's not installed. So we can actually install packages for using man pages. We can type in, for example, pacman-s man, and from where do you want to install? I'm going to choose actually the first repository and then install the package. And now if I type in again man user mode, you can see I can access the manual page of user mode and I can check all the options available to me. Now remember, mans are not installed by default in Arch. You have to install them yourself. So the base system is now installed. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to type in exit to go back to the root Arch ISO on my USB stick. I can now unmount the root partition by typing in umount dash capital R slash MNT. So it's going to basically force to unmount all mount points in my system and hit enter. And now I can reboot my machine by typing in reboot. Now it's going to lose, of course, connection to my laptop if I hit enter here. You can see, I can see my laptop is rebooting. So I'm going to make sure that everything is working fine. And I'm going to be back with you guys here on the terminal in a moment. I'm back here on the terminal, guys. I checked my laptop and the grab bootloader was correctly installed. I booted up Arch. I already connected to the internet. I'm going to show you again here how to do that here on my terminal. And I have a new IP on the newly booted machine. So I can type in now SSH. And I'm going to use my user, which I just created, hermano, and the IP is 192.168.1.118 this time, and I can hit enter. Now, usually you want to connect. I want to say yes, and now I can enter the password for my user. I'll do that, and you can see now I am in my Arch installation. So how did I connect to the internet? Well, remember we installed Network Manager before, and Network Manager has two utilities. You can use the NMCLI utility, which is the Network Manager command line utility, command line interface to do that, or you can use also the NMTUI, which is the Network Manager terminal user interface. And it looks like this. Basically, you go to activate a connection, you'll search for your Wi-Fi, you hit enter, and you will be asked for the password. And once you hit enter again, if the password is correct, of course, you will be connected to Wi-Fi. After that, you can hit escape, and you can hit escape again to exit the utility. And once you type IP space A, you should be able to see on the second device, which is called WLP0S20F3, complicated name. The INET line is 192.168.1.118. If you want to see it with color, you can use the -C option for color, and it shows you. Let me actually clean out the terminal. It's going to show it to you in better way. It's a little bit easier to read. So now we have a basic working installation of Arch here. Right now we can go ahead and install a desktop environment or or a window manager or whatever. We are really ready to go. But before we do this, we need to take care of two things. First of all, I want to make sure that my Windows installation is actually detected. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to again rerun the grub configuration file with the hope that it's going to work. If not, I will need to reinstall grub one more time. But let me try first to do sudo grub mkconfig and -o. This is the same command we used before. The configuration file is going to go under /boot /grub/grub.cfg, and let's see if Windows is going to be detected this time. I need to enter my password because I'm using sudo, and let's see what it finds. And you can see it found the Windows Boot Manager. So when I will reboot my machine, I will be able also to boot into Windows if I want to do that. So it's great that I didn't have to reinstall grub. Sometimes it happens, sometimes not, but I was lucky enough this time it didn't happen. Now you can see also here no snapshots found because I installed grub.fs, but I don't have anything to take snapshots with yet in the system. And that's what I'm going to do as a last step for this video. It's to install Timeshift and Timeshift AutoSnap, which are utilities used to take snapshots of the system. And Timeshift AutoSnap is going to take snapshots every time you're going to update your system. And that is so that if you are updating your system and when you reboot the system it's not going to work, you have the option to basically roll back to a previous snapshot that was working on your system. So both Timeshift and Timeshift AutoSnap are actually on the AUR, on the Arch user repository. And we can install them manually or we can install them with a AUR helper. Now, it's really up to you, but if you're going to install many packages from the AUR, definitely it's worth, I think, to install a helper. In my case here, I'm going to install Yay. You can install also Paru if you want. I had some issues with Paru lately. It wasn't able to compile some packages, but I'm going to use Yay in this case. But feel free to experiment also with Paru. Is also a great helper for the AUR. So we need actually Git installed in our system because we need to clone the repository. So Git is not installed yet. So let me type in sudo pacman-s and then Git very simply. I'm just going to accept the defaults here. It's going to take a moment. This is not a big package. And so to install Yay here, we can type in git clone and then https://aur.archlinux.org/yay. Now this is going to compile Yay from scratch. If you want to just install the binary or compile the binary, you can just type in also /bin to install the binary directly. I'm gonna use this because it's a little bit faster for the video as well. So it's gonna clone this very quickly. Now you can see if I type in ls, I have only one directory here, which is yay-bin. I don't have any home directory because I haven't installed the packages for that. This is just try to keep the installation as clean as possible. But if you want to have directories like documents, downloads, and so on, you need to install the xtg utils directory. But I'm not going to do this yet. I'm going to do this probably in the next video because it's going to be continued on this installation. So now we need to move into yay-bin. So cd yay-bin. And if I type in ls, you can see we have the package builder. So we can build it by typing in make pkg-si. And so it's going to take a moment to do this. It's not a big package. You can see it's already done almost. We just need to install it right now, and Yay is now installed. So I go back to my home directory by typing cd, and if I type in Yay, you can see it's searching now for updates on the main repositories and also the AUR. Now there is nothing to do here. So I'm going to install Timeshift and Timeshift AutoSnap. So I'm going to type in yay-s, and I'm going to install Timeshift -bin because I want to install the binary as it's a little bit faster to install also for the video, and also Timeshift -AutoSnap and then hit enter. These are the only two packages I want. So Packages to clean build, I would say no. Preferences to show no. And now it's going to basically download and build the packages for me, plus of course the dependencies. It's going to take a moment to do this, guys. I'm going to be back with you once it's done. I'm going to take a break as well. So there you go. The packages are now installed. I had to confirm twice to install the packages. So if you see a prompt asking you to install it, just press enter to install your packages. Now, if I type in here sudo timeshift list devices, and you can see here I have only one device basically, and that's actually where I need to store the snapshots, which my Btrfs file system will take. So to do this, I can type in again sudo timeshift, and instead of list, I can use -- snapshot / device /dev /nvme 1 and 1p1, and then hit enter. And you can see it saved a configuration file also in the timeshift.json file in the timeshift directory under my etc directory. Now, if I want to create a snapshot here, I can type in sudo timeshift -- create, and I would say -- comments in quotes first backup close quotes -- tags D. If you want more information about these options, you can use also the man page for Timeshift, or you can go online on the Timeshift Git repository. It's going to be everything explained there. So I'm just going to take a snapshot of my system that was now created. Now, Btrfs is creating the snapshot, but this snapshot is not going to be in grub because it's basically on demand. Grub is going to create snapshots of your system when you're going to upgrade or update your system. And that's exactly the point of it, so that you can boot into an earlier system if you happen to have an update which is buggy. Now, if you want to have this snapshot in grub Btrfs, you will have to run again grub -mk config -o and then /boot /grub/grub.cfg, and of course I must run this as sudo. And now it should detect also the snapshot. You can see there it says found snapshot timeshift Btrfs. So this snapshot is going to be used, or is going to be displayed in grub when I boot up my machine. And if tomorrow I update my machine and there is an update on my machine which is buggy and my system is bricked, for example, I can start my laptop and I can tell grub to start from this snapshot and recover my system. Now, if you're updating the system with Pacman or with Yay, the snapshots are going to be taken automatically, but you can take them manually as I showed you. Now, later, if you're installing a desktop environment or a window manager, there is also a GUI for Timeshift, which is maybe a little easier, but you get used to the command line as well. So basically now what you have a foundation for your Arch installation where you can build your desktop environment or your window manager with snapshots capability, where you can roll back every time you have a problem updating your system. So I know there's a lot of information here about utilities, installation, partitioning, formatting, Btrfs, and whatever. So I tried to make it as clear as possible. I hope it was clear for you guys. This is really a basic install for a basic understanding on how Arch is working and basically the inner workings of a Linux operating system, because this actually is true for many Linux distributions. The packages, the binaries here, and the package manager is exclusive to Arch, but systemd, systemctl, and many other utilities we used here are actually in every single Linux distribution. So it gives you a good understanding on how you can manage your system, and I hope this video was helpful to you. I'm gonna see you guys in the next one, where we are going to build our desktop environment or our window manager. It's going to probably be Sway, which requires a little bit tweaking because there is also an NVIDIA card in here, but we will see. Anyway, I hope this was useful for you guys, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you very soon in the next one.
So there we go, guys. We install Arch, really the basic Arch system, following the Arch wiki guide. So I will leave a link to some of the things I've talked about in the video description below, so you can check them out if you need more detailed information. And if you have any question, let me also know in the comments below. I will try to answer you when I can, as soon as I can. I don't have much time, but I do read all the comments that you're writing. You have to know that. When I find the time, I will also answer some of your questions. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I'll see you very soon in the next one, when we're going to build on top of this one. We're going to build a window manager. So stay tuned for the next video and take care of yourself.